Now, for several hours, we saw multiple unmarked vehicles arriving at the home and up to a dozen investigators all over the property. Now, investigators spent considerable time at the front door area, appearing to focus on the porch and walkway, where a trail of Nancy Guthrie's blood was discovered right after the kidnapping.
5 times. That's how many times federal investigators returned to the same residential address in Tucson, Arizona. Not Nancy Guthrie's home. Not the crime scene where her blood was found on the front porch. The home of her daughter Annie and son-in-law Tommaso Cioni. The last 2 people documented to have seen Nancy Guthrie alive. February 7th, the first search. Agents arrived with vehicles, spent hours inside, photographed multiple rooms. They returned. Again and again and again. 5 documented visits across an active federal investigation. Each time they carried something out, a silver briefcase, brown evidence bags, boxes, documents, and on one of those visits they took Annie's car. 38 days later, that vehicle still sits in federal custody. Not returned, not released. Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed it publicly. The FBI confirmed it. The investigative activity at that residence has been extensive, deliberate, and ongoing, but neither agency will say what they found or what they're still looking for. Before we go further, understand this clearly. Tommaso Cioni has not been charged with any crime. He has not been named as a suspect by law enforcement. Annie Guthrie cooperated fully with investigators from day one. What you're about to hear is based entirely on publicly documented investigative activity, official law enforcement statements, and verified court records. This is not an accusation. This is an examination of what investigators have done and why it matters. Who is Tommaso Cioni? Tommaso Dominic Cioni was born on June 18, 1975, in San Giovanni Valdarno, a medieval town in the Tuscany region of Italy. He relocated to the United States in the early 2000s and settled in Tucson, Arizona. In 2006, he married Annie Guthrie, Nancy's eldest daughter. That same year, he began teaching at Basis Oro Valley School, a highly regarded charter school in Tucson. For more than 15 years, he has taught 6th grade science and AP biology. On a personal biography posted to an Italian Cultural Association website, Cioni describes himself as someone who writes when he gets the chance, studies lizards, plays electric bass, and makes homemade pasta. By every external measure, a quiet, private man living a quiet, private life. He lives approximately 10 miles north of Nancy Guthrie's Catalina Foothills home. The drive between the 2 residences takes roughly 15 to 20 minutes depending on traffic. Tommaso Cioni became part of the Guthrie family in 2006. For nearly 2 decades, he attended family gatherings, holidays, birthdays. He knew Nancy's routines, her home, her habits, her medical needs. On the evening of January 31, 2026, Nancy Guthrie used the Uber app to request a ride from her home to Annie and Tommaso's residence. She arrived around 5:45 p.m. She had dinner with them. She played card games. She spent approximately 4 hours in their company. At 9:48 p.m., Tommaso Cioni drove Nancy home. He confirmed later that he watched until she was safely inside before he pulled away. Her garage door opened. It closed again at 9:50 p.m. That 2-minute window is the last confirmed, documented moment anyone in this case can place Nancy Guthrie inside her home alive and accounted for. Tommaso Cioni was the last person to see her. Before we dive deeper into what federal investigators found at that residence, if you're following this case and want to stay updated on every development, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because here at this channel, we don't just cover breaking news. We investigate the timeline, the evidence, and the questions law enforcement won't answer publicly. Every search matters. Every piece of evidence matters. Every silence matters. Subscribe now and let's continue. January 31st, 2026. At 5:32 p.m., Nancy Guthrie opened the Uber app on her iPhone and requested a ride from her Catalina Foothills home to her daughter Annie's house. The trip was short, routine, familiar. She arrived around 5:45 p.m. She stepped inside. She hugged her daughter. She greeted Tommaso. They had dinner together. Reports indicate the meal was pleasant, comfortable, nothing unusual. Nancy played card games with Annie and Tommaso. She spent roughly 4 hours in their company. By all accounts from family members who spoke publicly, the evening was ordinary. Nancy was in good spirits. She was looking forward to attending her virtual church service the following morning, as she did every Sunday, without exception. At approximately 9:48 p.m., Tommaso Cioni drove Nancy home. He later confirmed to investigators that he watched until she was safely inside. Her garage door opened. Security footage and timestamps confirm it closed again at 9:50 p.m. That garage door closing at 9:50 p.m. is the last confirmed visual documentation of Nancy Guthrie's presence inside her home. From 9:50 p.m. on January 31st until 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, the verified record is silent. No outbound calls, no text messages, no movement registered on any recording system subscribed to the property. Nancy Guthrie was alone in a house she had occupied for more than 50 years, in a neighborhood she knew by heart, in a bed she had slept in through 5 decades of Arizona nights. At 1:47 a.m., her doorbell camera went offline. Not a power surge, not a malfunction. The device disconnected at a specific moment investigators have publicly confirmed is directly relevant to the timeline of her disappearance. At approximately 2:12 a.m., a secondary Nest camera elsewhere on the property registered a motion detection event. There was no recording. Nancy did not have an active cloud subscription on that device. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker stopped syncing with her iPhone. Her phone, her wallet, her hearing aids, her daily cardiac medication, and her car were all recovered inside the home. The only thing missing was Nancy. When investigators processed the front entrance, they recovered biological trace material confirmed by DNA analysis to belong to Nancy Guthrie. Blood spatter patterns on the front porch indicated she had been injured at or near the threshold. If you look at the photographs released by investigators, you can see the blood droplets. Small, perfectly round, almost circular in nature. Former homicide investigator Chris McDonough analyzed these patterns publicly and made a critical observation. When blood drops straight down at a 90-degree angle, it creates perfectly elliptical droplets. That means the person bleeding was stationary, not moving. If Nancy had been running, stumbling, or being dragged, you would see elongated patterns, arrow-shaped drops pointing in the direction of movement. But these drops, perfectly round, she was standing still, or kneeling, or on her hands and knees, stationary when that blood hit the ground. And there's something else in those photographs, a fine mist of smaller droplets surrounding the larger ones. McDonough called this high-velocity spatter. It's the kind of pattern you see when someone coughs blood, or spits, or exhales forcefully while bleeding. The velocity of a cough creates that mist, those tiny satellite droplets that spread outward from the main source. What that tells investigators is simple but critical. Nancy Guthrie was alive when she left that house. She was breathing. She was conscious enough to cough. Whatever happened to her inside, she was still fighting when she reached that threshold. Sheriff Chris Nanos told the New York Times there were additional things at that scene that, in his words, did not sit well. Details he declined to elaborate on publicly. Tommaso Cioni dropped Nancy at her home at 9:50 p.m. At 1:47 a.m., a masked figure appeared at her front door. Between those two moments, Nancy Guthrie's world separated from the life she knew. And the man who drove her home that night has not spoken a single public word in 38 days. February 7th, 2026. 6 days after Nancy was reported missing, federal agents and deputies from the Pima County Sheriff's Department arrived at the residence shared by Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Cioni. Multiple law enforcement vehicles surrounded the property. Investigators remained inside for several hours. During that first search, agents were observed photographing multiple rooms. Neighbors reported seeing officers moving through the house methodically, room by room. The search was thorough, deliberate, and extensive. This was not a quick walkthrough. This was a full-scale evidence collection operation. At some point during one of these searches, investigators were observed carrying a silver briefcase into the residence. Former FBI agent Tracy Walder, who reviewed publicly available footage of the searches, assessed the silver case as evidence processing equipment. During a subsequent visit, agents exited the residence carrying a white case and a brown evidence bag. One agent was observed wearing blue gloves, standard protocol when handling biological or trace evidence. Tracy Walder publicly assessed the white case as additional evidence processing equipment and the brown bag as collected evidence. The FBI returned to the property a second time, then a third, then a fourth, then a fifth. Think about that. 5 times. You don't go back to the same house 5 times because you're bored. You go back because every time you search, you find something. Something that leads you to believe there's more. Former law enforcement officials who reviewed the investigative timeline noted that this is not standard procedure. Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Bob Gilliam stated publicly that each return represents renewed probable cause. That's a legal term. It means investigators went before a judge, presented new evidence, and obtained authorization to search again. You can't just show up and walk in. Each search requires a warrant. Each warrant requires evidence. Evidence that convinces a federal magistrate there is probable cause to believe additional evidence exists at that location. 5 searches equals 5 warrants. 5 warrants equals 5 presentations of new evidence before a judge. That's not routine. That's intensive. That's investigators following a trail that keeps producing results. Retired homicide detective John Lamb, who worked major case investigations for over 2 decades, reviewed the search activity and stated publicly that when you see multiple returns to the same location, you're watching investigators build a prosecutable case in real time. They're not just gathering evidence, they're establishing chain of custody. They're documenting everything under protocols that will survive cross-examination in court. Every photograph, every item collected, every sample taken, every witness statement, all of it building toward a case that can withstand the scrutiny of defense attorneys and convince a jury beyond reasonable doubt. During one of these searches, federal agents impounded Nancy Guthrie's vehicle. Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed this publicly during interviews with NBC News. The vehicle was towed from the residence and taken into federal custody for processing and analysis. 38 days later, that vehicle has not been returned. When a vehicle is impounded in a missing persons investigation, it is typically processed within days, maybe a week. Forensic teams examine it for trace evidence, biological material, fibers, fingerprints. They vacuum the interior for hair. They swab surfaces for DNA. They inspect the trunk for blood, soil, anything that doesn't belong. They examine the undercarriage. They check tire treads for unique wear patterns that could match impressions at a crime scene. But modern vehicles are more than just metal and fabric. They're digital witnesses. Every car manufactured after 2014 has an event data recorder, essentially a black box like airplanes have. It records speed, braking, acceleration, steering input. If that car was driven hard, if it braked suddenly, if it accelerated quickly, that data is stored. GPS systems record coordinates. Every address entered into the navigation system is stored in memory. Even if the driver deleted the destination manually, forensic technicians can recover it. Some vehicles store months of location data. Investigators can build a complete map of everywhere that car has been. Cellular data from connected car systems like OnStar or satellite radio can triangulate position even without GPS active. If Annie's vehicle traveled to a specific remote location on the night of January 31st or early morning hours of February 1st, that data exists. And if investigators found something in that data, something that points to a location, a timeline, a route that doesn't match the known movements of the vehicle, they're not releasing that car until every forensic process is complete. But there's more. Modern vehicles track everything. They record which doors were opened and when. They log seatbelt usage. They document every time the vehicle was started, how long it ran, what the outside temperature was. Some systems even record interior camera footage if the vehicle has driver assistance features. All of that data sits in the vehicle's computer system, waiting to be extracted by forensic technicians who know where to look. Sheriff Nanos was asked directly by reporters why the vehicle has not been returned. He stated only that it remains part of the ongoing investigation and declined to provide additional details. That is not evasion. That is operational security. When federal prosecutors are building a case, they do not disclose evidence that could give suspects time to construct explanations, destroy additional evidence, or coordinate stories. The silver briefcase, the brown evidence bags, the white case, the car, Every item removed from that residence is now sitting in a federal evidence facility, cataloged, analyzed, and protected under chain of custody protocols that will hold up in court. Here's what investigators typically look for during searches related to a missing persons investigation: clothing, shoes, any item that might have been worn during the time frame of the disappearance. Investigators will test those items for DNA, for soil samples, for plant material that could link a person to a specific outdoor location, electronics, phones, computers, tablets, hard drives, USB drives, SD cards. Digital forensics teams can recover deleted text messages, deleted photos, deleted search histories. They can extract metadata from photos showing when and where they were taken. They can recover encrypted messaging apps even if the user thought those messages disappeared. Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, Snapchat. Every message leaves a digital footprint somewhere, even if it's just a notification ping to a server. Documents, financial records, bank statements, credit card receipts. Investigators build timelines from transactions. A gas station receipt places you at a specific location at a specific time. An ATM withdrawal shows you had cash when you claimed to be broke. A Walmart receipt for duct tape, tarps, bleach, cleaning supplies purchased days before a crime raises questions. They look for notebooks, calendars, planners, handwritten notes. Investigators have solved cases from a single page of handwriting that contradicted a suspect's story. They look for receipts tucked in coat pockets, gas station timestamps on credit card statements, fast food bags in trash cans showing someone drove through a specific location on a specific night. They look for cleaning supplies, large purchases of bleach, disinfectants, trash bags, receipts for carpet shampoo machines rented and returned the day after a disappearance. Luminol reveals blood cleaned but not erased. Alternate light sources reveal biological fluids invisible to the naked eye. And they look for biological material: hair, fibers, skin cells, blood, saliva. Anything that can be tested, analyzed, and compared to samples collected from Nancy Guthrie's residence. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Bob Gilliam stated publicly that when investigators return to the same location multiple times, it often indicates they are following a forensic trail. One piece of evidence leads to another. One discovery generates a new search parameter. For example, investigators find a receipt during the first search. That receipt shows a purchase at a specific store on a specific date. They return for the second search to look for the item purchased. They find the item. That item contains trace evidence. They return for the third search to collect additional samples from the same area where the item was stored. They send those samples to a lab. Lab results come back indicating biological material. They return for the fourth search with luminol, with alternate light sources, with equipment designed to detect blood that has been cleaned but not completely erased. Each search builds on the last. Each discovery justifies the next warrant. And then there is the silence. On February 1st, 2026, the day Nancy Guthrie was reported missing, her family began speaking publicly. Savannah Guthrie, Nancy's youngest daughter and co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, took a leave of absence and flew to Tucson. She posted emotional videos pleading for her mother's safe return. She offered a $1 million private reward. She appeared on camera multiple times, addressing whoever took her mother, begging for proof of life. Cameron Guthrie, Nancy's son and a retired Air Force colonel, spoke directly on camera. He addressed whoever was responsible, appealing for his mother's return. He participated in search efforts. He worked with investigators. Annie Guthrie cooperated so fully with investigators that they searched her property 5 times and impounded her vehicle. Every member of the Guthrie family produced a visible, documented public presence in the days following Nancy's disappearance. Except one person. Tommaso Cioni has not spoken publicly. Not one statement. Not one appearance beside Annie during any of her public-facing moments. Not one word directed toward the investigation, the family's appeal, or the reward. 38 days of complete public silence. Retired homicide detective John Lamb reviewed the documented timeline and stated publicly that silence in a case like this is a decision. It is not passive, it is active, and it is made every single day. Forensic psychologist Dr. Gary Baccato, who has worked extensively with law enforcement on behavioral analysis in missing persons cases, stated that when a family member who was the last to see the victim chooses not to speak publicly, especially when other family members are actively appealing for information, that silence is significant. It suggests the individual is operating under direct legal advice. That does not mean guilt. It means the individual has been advised by counsel to refrain from making public statements that could be used in a subsequent investigation or prosecution. But it also means this: Tommaso Cioni's legal team believes there is a reason he should not speak publicly. And that reason, whatever it is, outweighs the public pressure, the family appeals, and the emotional weight of remaining silent while his mother-in-law is missing. Investigators notice silence. They notice who speaks and who doesn't. They notice who appears at press conferences and who doesn't. They notice who cooperates publicly and who operates behind legal counsel. And they build a behavioral profile from those observations. But Tommaso Cioni is not the only person who has drawn investigative attention in this case. On February 4, 2026, just 3 days after Nancy Guthrie was reported missing, the FBI arrested a man 300 miles away in Hawthorne, California. His name is Derek Hawthorne. He was charged with making false ransom demands in connection with Nancy's disappearance. Within 48 hours of his arrest, he was transported to Tucson and placed in federal custody under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Arizona. Forensic psychologist Dr. Gary Baccato, who reviewed the case documents, noted something unusual about the arrest and the speed of the transport. Hawthorne had no apparent connection to Nancy Guthrie. He lived in Los Angeles County. He had no documented ties to Tucson. Yet federal prosecutors in Arizona wanted him in their custody immediately. When investigators move that quickly, when they bypass standard extradition procedures and transport someone across state lines within days, it suggests urgency. It suggests they believe that individual has information beyond what the charges indicate. Court documents revealed that Hawthorne had been in communication with members of the Guthrie family prior to Nancy's disappearance. The affidavit referenced financial arrangements that were not detailed in any of the ransom notes sent to media outlets. Dr. Baccato stated publicly that this detail was troubling. It suggested prior communication. It suggested Hawthorne knew something about the family's circumstances before Nancy vanished. Whether that makes him a participant, a witness, or simply an opportunist remains unclear. But investigators don't transport suspects across state lines at federal expense unless they believe there's more to the story. Retired FBI agent Bob Gilliam stated that when you see someone arrested for false ransom demands and then immediately brought into the jurisdiction where the victim disappeared, that person becomes what investigators call the weakest link. If there's a conspiracy, if multiple people are involved, the person arrested first often has the most to lose and the most to gain from cooperation. Investigators will sit that person down and present two options. Door number 1, you cooperate, you tell us everything you know, and we work with federal prosecutors on your charges. Door number 2, you stay silent, and you face the full weight of federal obstruction charges, false statement charges, and anything else we can build against you. Most people choose door number 1. Whether Derek Hawthorne has cooperated, whether he has provided information about who else might be involved, remains unknown. What is known is that he remains in federal custody in Tucson, and investigators continue to build their case. It is critical to state clearly once more: Tommaso Cioni has not been charged. He has not been named a suspect. Annie Guthrie has fully cooperated with every aspect of this investigation. Sheriff Chris Nanos has stated this publicly. But the documented investigative activity, the repeated searches, the impounded vehicle, the silence, all of it forms a pattern that investigators are documenting methodically, not as proof of guilt, but as pieces of a larger timeline that will eventually tell the complete story of what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Here is what we know investigators have collected from Nancy Guthrie's residence. Biological trace material confirmed by DNA analysis to belong to Nancy Guthrie. Blood spatter on the front porch indicating she was injured at or near the threshold. DNA from an unknown male. Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed publicly on February 19th that the sample is a mixed DNA profile, genetic material from more than one contributor. That sample was sent to a private forensic laboratory in Florida for separation and analysis. The lab reported challenges with the mixture ratio, but indicated resolution was expected within weeks or months. Investigative genetic genealogy is now active on this case. This is the same methodology that identified the Golden State Killer after more than 40 years. The same methodology that identified Brian Kohberger in the University of Idaho murders. The same methodology that broke the Gilgo Beach case. It does not require a CODIS match. It does not require the suspect to have ever submitted a DNA sample anywhere. It requires one relative anywhere, in a commercial genealogy database. Ancestry.com, 23andMe, MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA. Someone in the suspect's family tree submitted their DNA years ago to learn about their ethnic heritage, never knowing that decision would one day help identify a criminal decades later. The genealogy process works like this. Forensic genealogists take the unknown DNA profile from the crime scene and upload it to GEDmatch, a public database where users have opted in to allow law enforcement searches. The system compares that DNA to every profile in the database looking for partial matches, not exact matches, partial, cousins, second cousins, third cousins. Even distant relatives share enough DNA to show up as a match. Once a match is found, genealogists build a family tree backward in time. They identify the common ancestor between the unknown suspect and the known relative. Then they build forward, documenting every descendant of that common ancestor. They narrow the pool. They eliminate individuals who don't fit the physical description, the age range, the geographic location. They cross-reference public records, birth certificates, marriage licenses, obituaries, social media, driver's license photos. They narrow and narrow until one name remains, a name that fits every parameter, and that name becomes the investigative focus. Surveillance begins. Trash pulls are conducted. Discarded items containing DNA are collected legally from public trash bins. That DNA is tested. If it matches the crime scene sample, you have your suspect. This process has solved cold cases that were dormant for 30, 40, even 50 years. Dr. Gary Baccato, who has consulted on cases involving forensic genealogy, explained publicly that the technology has become so precise that investigators can identify a suspect even if the only match in the database is a third or fourth cousin. The family tree extends outward. Researchers identify every branch, every descendant, every person who could theoretically be the source of that DNA. And then they eliminate. Too old, wrong location, wrong physical description, different ethnic background. One by one, names drop off the list until only a handful remain. Sometimes, only one. And when that happens, investigators don't announce it publicly. They watch, they wait, they gather additional evidence, and when they're ready, they move. Here is what we know investigators have from digital records. Cell tower data, documenting every device that moved through the corridor between Nancy's Catalina Foothills home and Camino Royale, where a vehicle was captured on Ring camera at 2:36 a.m. License plate reader data from the routes surrounding that corridor. 10,000 hours of surveillance footage from the neighborhood, including Ring cameras, Nest cameras, and traffic cameras. Google Trends data showing searches for Nancy Guthrie's home address originated in Arizona as early as June 2025, with additional spikes in January 2026. Former investigator Chris McDonough addressed the sheriff's public statement about reviewing 100,000 vehicles and made a critical point. Technology exists today that makes that process far faster than the public realizes. Software called BriefCam, developed by an Israeli company for military and law enforcement use, can sort through massive amounts of video footage in minutes. You input search parameters. Blue car, 1:47 a.m., February 1st. The software scans every camera feed, isolates every blue car in that time frame, and presents results in under 5 minutes. What used to take investigators weeks of manually reviewing footage now takes minutes. The sheriff's statement about 100,000 vehicles is not a limitation. It's a data set. And that data set has already been processed. BriefCam was used in the Las Vegas shooting investigation to count the number of rounds fired by analyzing muzzle flashes in video footage. It was used to track suspects across multiple camera systems in urban environments. It can identify specific individuals based on clothing, gait, height, and build across dozens of camera angles. When Sheriff Nanos says investigators are reviewing extensive video, he's not describing officers sitting in a room watching monitors for hours. He's describing algorithms processing terabytes of data, isolating vehicles, tracking movement patterns, building timelines automatically. The technology is already doing the work. Here is what investigators are doing: running genealogy analysis on the interior DNA profile, building a family tree, narrowing the suspect pool one relative at a time, processing Nancy Guthrie's vehicle, extracting GPS data, downloading computer records, analyzing biological samples, conducting door-to-door canvassing, asking neighbors about internet disruptions on the night of February 1st, collecting additional surveillance footage, embedding a dedicated task force at the FBI Tucson office, 4 detectives and 1 sergeant from the Pima County Sheriff's Homicide Unit working full-time alongside federal agents. Here is what investigators are not doing. They are not publicly naming suspects. They are not releasing details about what was found during the 5 searches. They are not disclosing what evidence exists in Annie's vehicle. They are not confirming or denying theories about who was involved. That silence is not confusion. It is strategy. Sheriff Chris Nanos stated publicly on March 2nd that there is information in this investigation that he will not share publicly because doing so would compromise the prosecution being built around it. Not the investigation, the prosecution. That tells you where this case is heading. Investigators are not just gathering evidence. They are building a case that will hold up in court. And every search, every impounded vehicle, every DNA sample, every cell tower record is another piece of that case. Dr. Gary Baccato, forensic psychologist who reviewed the investigative timeline, stated publicly that the genealogy tree does not need a confession. It does not ask for cooperation. It builds itself one relative at a time from whatever is sitting in a public database. And when the branch ends, there is a name. That name is already in the data. The algorithm is already running. And the distance between where this investigation stands today and a suspect being publicly named is, by every verified documented official account, shorter than it has ever been. Retired FBI agent and investigative analyst John Lamb stated that this case is the polar opposite of a cold case. It is red hot. You have up to 100 agents and analysts working active leads. You have DNA and genealogy analysis. You have digital records being processed. You have multiple searches generating new evidence. This is not a case standing still. But here is what we do not know. We do not know what the genealogy analysis has revealed. We do not know if investigators have narrowed the suspect pool to specific individuals. We do not know what evidence exists in Annie's vehicle that has kept it in federal custody for 38 days. We do not know what was found during the 5 searches. We do not know what the cell tower data shows about devices moving through the corridor between Nancy's home and Camino Royale at 2:36 a.m. We do not know if investigators have identified the masked figure on Nancy's doorbell camera. We do not know if the physical description established by the FBI, 5'9" to 5'10", average build, possible wrist marking, has been matched to a specific individual. What we know is this: investigators are working methodically. They are building a case and they are keeping the most critical evidence close to the vest. When they are ready, they will act. And when they act, it will be swift, coordinated, and backed by evidence that has been months in the making. 38 days. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has been missing from the home she built her life inside for 38 days. Her daughter Savannah has offered a $1 million reward. The FBI has added $100,000. Federal investigators have searched the residence of her daughter and son-in-law 5 times. They have impounded a family vehicle. They have collected evidence, processed DNA, analyzed digital records, and built a timeline. And they have not stopped. On March the 2nd, Sheriff Chris Nanos said publicly that investigators are definitely closer. On February 19th, he confirmed DNA evidence is being analyzed through investigative genetic genealogy. On February 7th, federal agents conducted the first of 5 searches at the residence of the last people to see Nancy alive, The evidence is building. The timeline is tightening. The genealogy tree is narrowing. And somewhere in Tucson, Arizona, someone knows exactly what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Someone knows where she is. Someone knows why she was taken. Someone knows what those 5 searches uncovered. And investigators are methodically, relentlessly, closing the distance between evidence and arrest. Time moved forward. Days became weeks. Weeks became a month. But inside the walls of the investigation, the work never stopped. The searches continued. The DNA processed. The genealogy tree grew. And the question that has haunted this case since February 1st remains. What are they looking for? The answer may already be in federal custody, locked in evidence bags, stored in forensic labs, documented in search warrants and affidavits that remain sealed. The public will know when investigators are ready, and when that moment comes, the timeline will speak for itself. 5 searches, 38 days, 1 missing woman, and a case that refuses to go cold. The camera fades to a quiet shot of a residential street in Tucson, the sun setting behind the Catalina Mountains. A home sits quiet, driveway empty, windows dark. Federal agents came here 5 times. Each time they carried something away. The screen lingers on the front door. No movement, no sound, just silence. And somewhere in a federal evidence facility, boxes sit labeled and sealed. Inside those boxes, the answers wait. The shot slowly fades to black. The silence deepens. The story remains unfinished. This investigation is not over. It is accelerating. Every search brings investigators closer. Every DNA result narrows the suspect pool. Every day that passes is another day the genealogy tree grows. If you know anything about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, contact the FBI tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit directly at tips.fbi.gov. The family reward stands at $1 million. The FBI's reward stands at $100,000. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. The moment a suspect is publicly named, the moment the DNA results are confirmed, the moment this investigation moves from evidence to arrest, this is where that video goes live first. Share this with everyone following this case. The more eyes on the evidence, the harder it becomes to stay invisible. We are not stopping, not until she is found.